Good evening. I'm Alex DeLucia, your host this evening for Brookfield Today and Beyond. This evening, we'll be interviewing Sam Caligiuri, our candidate for Congress here in the 5th Congressional District. I should tell you that the show is brought to you by the Brookfield Republican Town Committee. And if you have questions, you can contact us at www.brookfieldgop.com. Sam, I'm delighted to see you this evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. What I usually like to do is let people start by telling the audience a little bit about themselves. So why don't you do that right now?
Well, Alex, thanks again for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity. And, you know, the fact that I'm standing here right now as a candidate for Congress is really a testament to the American dream. My parents were both immigrants to this country. My dad came here from Italy, my mom from Canada. They were both factory workers. They worked, in the case of my dad, almost until the day he died. Very hard work, day in and day out, to really provide opportunity for my brother John and me to get the best education we could and to really prosper. And one of the reasons that I'm running for Congress is because I think our country is heading in the wrong direction. And I want to make sure that my children, my 7-year-old daughter Grace, my 5-year-old son Owen, and children all over this country, and even people in their 20s and 30s today, have the kind of opportunities that I think you've benefited from, that I've benefited from, and that my parents came here to this country to work for. I'm an attorney by training. I'm a partner in a law firm in Hartford. I served on the Board of Aldermen in Waterbury for 5 years. I served as the acting mayor of Waterbury for 6 months when I woke up from knee surgery and found out that I was the mayor of Waterbury during a very difficult chapter in that city's history. But we made a lot of reforms, both ethics-wise and also financially, really started to turn that city around. I served in the state senate for 2 terms, representing 4 towns, Waterbury, Wolcott, Southington, and Cheshire. And it's a privilege for me to be the Republican nominee for Congress. I really believe that Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi are taking us in the wrong direction, that we still have an opportunity as a country to right the ship and to restore our country back to policies that are much more in line with a pro-growth economic agenda that we need to advance in order to turn our country around. So that's a little bit about me and about the issues that are motivating me to run for Congress.
I'm going to go with a follow-up and just raise another issue about you I found fascinating. Boston College, Yale Divinity School, and then a JD from Catholic University. What do you think that says about you? I mean, that's an interesting juxtaposition there.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know what it says to folks about me, but I know for me, you know, Boston College was a tremendous education. I went to Yale Divinity School because my personal faith is very important to me, and it was an opportunity for me to really study that from both a personal and a more academic perspective. But ultimately, I felt that I could serve people as an attorney and use my skills as an attorney, and that's why I went to law school and have really enjoyed practicing law. I'm a business lawyer, so I work with businesses around the country to try to help them to grow and to prosper, which ultimately helps all of us. And so I hope that it tells people that a little bit about my own personal interests and convictions, hopefully about the kind of mind that I have and my ability to really deal with a lot of different subjects and to be able to work with a lot of different material, which as a member of Congress you have to do. I know as a state legislator, one of the things I've enjoyed the most is the opportunity and the work that I have to do to learn a lot of different things about many different subjects so that you can make the very tough decisions that you have to make. And the work that we're facing nationally is critically important. And I'm really excited to put my academic training and my real-world training to work to help the people of this district.
Great. I somehow suspect most people would concur that all lawyers would be best served by having a master's in divinity. So.
Although I have to tell you, Alex, when I was going through divinity school, one of my colleagues was, and at the time I thought I would end up a lawyer, but one of my colleagues was an attorney who was absolutely convinced that he couldn't be both true to his faith and an attorney. So I obviously feel differently about that, and I think the law is not only a fascinating topic, but the reality is, Alex, it pervades every aspect of our lives. And I think that my training in the law has helped me to do a good job as a legislator, and I believe will help me to do a good job as a congressman.
And we're going to come back to that more. But the issue on everybody's minds, here we are 2 years into the Obama administration, unemployment rates still at the highest levels they've been in decades. What can we do to turn this situation around?
Well, we need to return this country back to a pro-jobs economic policy, which starts by getting spending under control. The reality is the way we really grow the economy is through policies that put as much resources back into the economy as possible. My own view, Alex, is that the federal government doesn't create jobs. What the federal government does is either put policies in place that either make it easier for the private sector to grow jobs or harder for the private sector to grow jobs. And I believe that Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi had been advocating policies that have made it much harder for the private sector to grow jobs. I think it starts by making sure you get spending under control, because the stimulus bill, for example, did very little to grow the economy and really succeeded only in growing the size of the federal government. The reason that's relevant is when you're growing the federal government at rates that are unsustainable. And the Congressional Budget Office came out just the other day with a report about our federal budget, saying we cannot continue to grow the budget at these rates and have it be sustainable. That impacts job growth, because ultimately, if you solve that sustainability problem by raising taxes, which is what Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi have consistently advocated, you stifle economic growth, because the single best way to stimulate the economy is to put money right back into the economy through families and businesses by keeping taxes low, so that businesses can reinvest in hiring people, so that businesses can reinvest in research and development, in hiring more, acquiring more machinery, the other things that they need to grow their businesses. You can't do that when tax rates are so high or threaten to go up even higher, which is what Murphy wants to do right now for small businesses, and have the capital you need to reinvest in your growth. And so, to me, but you can't cut taxes responsibly unless you get spending under control, because the truth of the matter is, Alex, that deficits can go so large that they can confiscate the wealth you need to grow the economy. And right now, economists are saying that our deficit is too large relative to GDP, and we've got to start getting our deficits under control so that we can grow the economy again. So we're really facing a very difficult situation right now, Alex, where we have to put spending controls in place so that we can reduce the federal deficit and hold tax rates down, and I believe cut them where we can, so that you can do the real, true stimulus.
I may be a bit of a cynic here, but I had read through Chris Murphy's opinions while getting ready for today's meeting, and I noticed he repeatedly used the word fund, which seemed to be code for spend. And he just wanted to spend, spend, spend. You, on the other hand, seem to think that tax cuts could be used to provide incentives to do things that are good for our economy, including creation of jobs. Would you like to expand a little bit more on your own ideas?
Yeah, I'd absolutely be happy to do that. And ultimately, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. I remember, just to go back to your first point, when Governor Weicker was pushing for the income tax, all the proponents of the income tax said that we have a revenue problem, we don't have a spending problem. And that if we instituted the income tax, we would be able to solve our deficit once and for all. Well, since the institution of the income tax in Connecticut, state government has more than doubled in size. We've had almost perpetual deficits. And it's because ultimately the problem is on the spending side. And I believe in calling them as I see them. We have a spending problem in Hartford, we have a spending problem in Washington, and we've got to get that under control. But the way that tax policy works, to your question, Alex, the question is, what's the best way to stimulate economic growth? Do you stimulate it through Keynesian economics, top-down, which Murphy supports, where the federal government takes our wealth and decides through its own spending who the winners and losers are? Or do you put money right back into the economy by holding down tax rates so that people can make the decisions for